So for accessibility purposes, quick visual description. I am a short, white-passing Mexicana, very, very long brown hair, and I have big glasses, and I'm wearing all black. Just kidding, I'm wearing jeans. My bad. So congratulations, you made it to the last session of Congreso in this building. Yeah, you're so done with it. I love it. No, I'm just kidding. And not to brag, but they do say they save the best for last. Just kidding. Who can compete with Dolores Huerta? So during this session, we have representatives from the National Trust of Historic Preservation, the National Park Service, and of course, LHC, who's going to be presenting over their research of the Latinx Route 66. Just real quick before we start, who knows about GIS? What, show of hands? Great. Perfect. I'm not going to explain it then. Mel's going to further explain it for folks that do not know, but we're going to be referencing that a lot today. So I have the pleasure of introducing this wonderful group of, can I just say all women, that is presenting today. So joining us online is Amy Webb, who joined the National Trust of Historic Preservation in 1993 and currently serves as a senior director based in Colorado. She currently manages the National Trust Preserve Route 66 initiative, a multi-year effort to preserve underrepresented sites and tell a fuller American story along Route 66, leading up to the Route 66 centennial in 2026. Amy holds a master's degree in architectural history and historic preservation from the University of Virginia and a bachelor's degree in architectural history from Wesley College in Massachusetts. Karina Rodgers. She's a graduate from the University of New Mexico with a master's degree in community regional planning with a license in historic preservation. And she is currently with the Latino Heritage Internship Program and the National Park Service, focusing on documenting oral histories that highlight Hispanic voices along Route 66. Asami. Thank you. I'm the Director of Education and Outreach. We have Miss Mel. She's in the back. She's the other one with very long brown hair and big glasses. She is, thank you, the lead GIS fellow for the Abuelas project. She's a recent graduate from the University of Texas, El Paso. She specializes in using GIS to analyze vulnerability and tree distribution along the US-Mexico border and is passionate about using GIS for the Latinx community. And not to brag, but Mel's actually going to be leaving us. That's not the bragging part, that's the sad part. But she's going to Brazil to be a Fulbright scholar. Karina Amalbert, so we have two Karinas up here. Yep. She was one of the GIS fellows and is now the incoming geospatial project manager. At LHC, she worked with Latinx and indigenous populations along Route 66 in Arizona, conducting oral histories and story mapping. She's also an urban and regional planning PhD student at FSU, studying radical and insurgent planning behaviors in Puerto Rico. I love that FSU got like a little round. I love that. Then we have Brittney Jimenez. She told you all not to come, and you all didn't listen to her, so thank you for that. She is a GIS fellow at LHC, focusing on the Abuelas project as well. Her work focuses on collecting sites of Latinx joy, grief, and resistance along California Route 66. She's a PhD candidate in Latin American and Latino studies at University of California, Santa Cruz, where Dolores Huerta's collection is. And where her work focuses on continued impacts of Chicana organizing by looking at contemporary organizing of young women who identify as Chicana. And last but definitely not least, we have Beatriz. You've seen her around. She has an MA in Latin American Studies from the University of Florida and is a photography fellow at LHC. She's also worked on oral histories, community archives, and rural communities across the Americas, but particularly Puerto Rico, the United States, and Chile. So now we're gonna start off with Miss Amy Webb, who's gonna be joining us virtually.
Can you hear me? You can hear me?
Yes.
Okay. And actually, I should have some slides that should be coming up, but let me just start by saying that I'm really excited and honored to be with you remotely today. I'm so sorry not to be here in person. Unfortunately, COVID had other plans for me this week, so that's why I'm not there. I was at the Congreso in Denver, and it is so impressive to see how far LHC has come and just how much has been accomplished in the past couple of years. Everyone knows Route 66, but there's a dominant cultural narrative that people know about it, a pop culture narrative, that doesn't necessarily take in the reality of Route 66. And so when the National Trust received an unexpected request specifically for Route 66, we decided that our goal going into the centennial anniversary in 2026 for Route 66 was to look at ways of correcting that. And so I came to Congreso and I had conversations with local men, and I knew that in telling the Latinx story for Route 66, it had to be done with LHC. And in conversations with Selah and also with Desiree, who serves as a member of our Preserve Route 66 Advisory Council, we decided that the Umbrellas program was really the magic sauce. That was the thing that would really hold us together. So we decided to do that. We also decided that Route 66 is 2,400 miles long and that we couldn't do it all at once. And so we took, to start, the western half from California to Texas. And so I'm excited today that you'll be able to see a virtual road trip along Route 66 and hear more about some of the experiences there. I can't see if my slides are up or not, but I wanted to just share with you before we turn things over. Oh, here we go. So if you go to the next one now, the next slide, I wanted to just share with you some of the other things that we're doing to elevate Latinx history as part of the Preserve Route 66 story. One of the first things we're doing is to, the first thing we did was to shine a spotlight on Angel Delgadillo from Pelican, Arizona, by giving him the National Trust's President's Award in 2023. Angel was a barber for many, many decades. He grew up on Route 66. He saw the economic prosperity that Route 66 brought to Route 66, and he also saw the economic devastation that came when Route 66 was decommissioned for the interstate. And so he took it upon himself to rally, to organize, to create the first state association for Route 66, and to secure a historic designation for Route 66 to ensure that businesses along Route 66, like the ones that he had, that his friends had, his family had, all across Arizona were saved. So we were so excited to be able to honor him in that way. Next slide. And just skip this one. And skip this in the interest of time. Just to give you a sense of what we've been doing along Route 66, if you can focus on the orange, that's the Latinx focus we've had for Route 66. And we have offered grants to legacy businesses along Route 66. We will have more of those coming this fall and next year. So grants for businesses, grants for nonprofits, grants for government agencies, all things towards telling the full story of Route 66. You can see here the LHC Fellows, which has the orange line all the way from California to Texas, as one of our key programs. Next slide. I wanted to say just a little bit about one of the programs. We also were looking at other programs that the National Trust has that we could elevate, provide assistance to Route 66. And one of the big ones we've been able to tap into is a program called Backing Historic Small Restaurants. This is a program that is funded by American Express. We've been offering it since 2021, and it really was something born out of the pandemic. American Express realized that restaurants had been probably the most impacted of any kind of business across the country. And so I'm proud to say that every single year that this program has been offered, we have had Route 66 restaurants that have been featured. You will see here that of the 9 restaurants that of Route 66 that have been honored, 4 of them are Latinx-owned restaurants. You can see what they are right here. And this is a program that is going to continue. In this round, this year, we had 50 restaurants. Each restaurant received $50,000 to help them with external improvements to their site, and also some money for them to help with operations. And in 2024, I did some number crunching, and 26% of the restaurants that were supported this year were Latinx-owned restaurants. This is a program that will be offered not just to Route 66, but across the entire country. It will be offered in 2025 and again in 2026. So if you would like to have more information about this program, you can go to the National Trust website, or my email will be at the end. I hope that all of you, I was listening to Sarah Bronin talk about her growing up with her family restaurant, and just thinking about how many multi-generational beloved restaurants there must be out there. And again, I'd love to have your help in connecting those to this wonderful resource. Next slide. Another way that we're looking at elevating stories, I was inspired by the African proverb that was shared about until the lion tells his story, that the hunter will always be the hero of the story. And so the National Trust has been also looking at ways to break down barriers and provide ways for not just these wonderful fellows, but for all of you to be able to tell your stories of Route 66. We have a Route 66 GIS and crowdsourcing campaign. This is our website, and you can go and upload a photo and just a couple of sentences, and it's really a way to democratize gathering stories and helping us to identify more places. Next slide. So that's it. I wanted to leave most of the time for the fellows to hear all of their wonderful stories. You'll be hearing about this. I hope this is work that we can continue. And with that, I will turn it back over to the fellows.
Alrighty. So, thank you, Amy, for that introduction. Can everyone hear me okay? All right, wonderful. Oh, how about now? Oh, there we go. Much better. Alrighty. So my name is Karina Rodgers. I am a white presenting Latina and a first-generation Mexican-American. I am an intern with the Latino Heritage Internship Program in the National Park Service, and I'm so grateful to be invited to participate in this panel with LHC. This has truly been such a beautiful and amazing educational experience for me, and I'm very grateful to be here. So I'm going to go ahead and get started on my portion of the presentation, so we can go to the next slide. Alrighty, so the project that I've been working on with the National Park Service is called the Hispanic Legacies of Route 66 in New Mexico. And this is an ongoing project that seeks to tell the stories of Route 66's Hispanic heritage through images, narrative, oral history. And it really illuminates the Hispanic influence on Route 66 and highlights those narratives that are not part of the popular education and the popular understanding of this road, this very crucial road. And so we can go to the next slide. And so just a quick note on terminology. I know this has been a topic on our community board outside about the terms that we use to identify ourselves. And we wanted to say that, the term Hispanic, we decided to use that term for this project because in New Mexico, that has a very nuanced, very complex history, especially surrounding culture and identity. Hispanic is a term that is used widely by residents of New Mexico. All right. Oh, okay, thank you. Alrighty, so just a quick recap of the project history. So as I said, this is an ongoing project, and the first phase of this project was in 2019, and it culminated in a story map that really painted the beginnings of this project. It painted a broad historical narrative of Hispanic history in New Mexico, as well as Hispanic history on Route 66 as it evolved through the decades. And so in this second phase of the project, which is my phase of the project, we're gearing this project more towards being a travel itinerary. And so we We interviewed business owners, we interviewed community residents, and we had them talk about their personal experiences with the road, growing up along the road, their family history within their towns, and really what they wanted travelers to understand as they visit their communities. And so this is also going to culminate in a story map as well. And so just to go over methodology, so I started out this project first doing research to establish existing resources and content and to help create new ideas. And then we moved on to outreach. So what we did is we mobilized our existing contacts through previous projects, through the previous phase, in order to make new connections. And then we scheduled introductory meeting with potential participants to really talk about the project and to get to know them on a personal level and for them to get to know us as well and for them to know this whole process of this project so that we could help gain rapport as we moved forward in the project. And then so we went into interviews and developing interview questions based off of those introductory meetings. And those interview questions were sent off to our participants for review. Our participants were able to play an active role in their own questions, whether it was editing, omitting, or just adding more questions about topics that they personally wanted to talk about. And then we went into development. So after the interviews, after this amazing process of being able to sit down face-to-face with community members, we went into transcription as well as video editing. And so this is the phase we are currently in as we are editing our story map. And again, throughout this process, our participants receive those transcriptions to approve, and they will receive their video edits before the story map is officially published. Alrighty. And then so just to go through our locations, we interviewed in 4 communities. We did 13 interviews. We have 15 narrators, and which culminated in 10 hours of video interview content, which is not including our B-roll, not including the really beautiful explanations of our participants as they showed us family photos, we went over old maps of how Route 66 affected communities. And so we have a lot of amazing content that whether or not it'll make the final story map, because we do have to package this right for people to easily process, it will be going into the archives of Center for Southwest Research at UNM to be used for future projects as well. Alrighty, so going into our first community along Route 66 as we move west, we went to Santa Rosa, which is founded in 1865 and originally called Agua Negro Chiquita. Santa Rosa formed from a Spanish rancho and traditionally ranched cattle and sheep. So Santa Rosa became a place of respite for weary travelers during the Great Depression. And Santa Rosa's place along Route 66 has been famously featured in numerous cinematic and literary works, such as The Grapes of Wrath. However, the experience of Santa Rosa residents with travelers along the Mother Road has also been documented in the influential literary work of Bless Me Ótima by Rudolfo Anaya, who Santa Rosa is his hometown. And so our narrators in Santa Rosa are business owners who have taken up the mantle after their loved ones have died and passed on the business. And they find purpose in serving their communities and carrying on the legacy of their parents and grandparents. And here we have a quote from Casey Martinez of the Comet 2 Drive-In saying that, "My father was a living legend. He was depicted in Bless Me Ótima. He was Anaya's best friend growing up. My dad was the vitamin kid, fastest kid in Guadalupe County." And I don't know if y'all have seen the movie or read the book, but the vitamin kid is an ongoing character and very sweet, humorous character in the book. Our next town is Moriarty. So Moriarty was founded in 1887 after the Mexican-American War, and traditionally this community is a dryland farming community and very well known for their pinto beans. So if you are ever stopping in Moriarty, please stop at the Whiting Bros gas station that Sal Lucero works, and he'll sell you a 20-pound bag of pinto beans, and they're delicious. And so what we really learned from this community, we really focused on Sal Lucero and Mike Anaya, who are really among the oldest residents of the community. Sal is in his late 80s, and Mike is 96 years old. And they've owned businesses along Route 66, Whiting Bros gas station, and El Comedor. And they grew up from poverty, literally with them and their family, built themselves up to be legacies and a really well-known name along Route 66. And we also interviewed Mike and Debbie Pogue from the Sunset Motel. They are not Hispanic, however, Mike grew up next to Sal Lucero's gas station all his life. His very first job was in Mike and Naya's store, and from knowing them growing up, he had really beautiful stories to tell us about them. And from his wife, Debbie Pogue, she had a really close relationship with Sal's wife, Inez. And together, they did preservation projects and restored the Whiting Brothers gas station sign. Our next community is the community of Cañón de Carnué, commonly called Carnuel. This is a Genízaro land grant community with a rich and complicated history. Established in 1763, Carnuel became one of the few Genízaro settlements that was granted land by the Spanish crown. So Genízaro is a term used to identify Hispanicized captive indigenous slaves, who were often a mix of Apache, Comanche, Pueblo, and Hispanic. Genízaros were only granted land to serve as a protective buffer between raiding bands of Comanches and the Spanish settlements in Albuquerque. So Carnuel was one of these buffers, or really what's called a sacrifice zone in a sacrifice community, that served as an outer protective layer for Albuquerque. The community went through centuries of struggle to survive and carve out a life for themselves in Tijeras Canyon. Through the decades, people saw many different modes of travel and use through the canyon, from horses and walking on foot on the Comanchero Trail, to wagons traveling the old road, and eventually automobiles traveling through on Route 66 and Interstate 40. So Tijeras Canyon and Carnuel was really the point that all these roads pass through, and they have their own stories of witnessing that evolution in travel and their own stories of these pathways and everything that they implicate for the community. And so our next town is Albuquerque. And so in Albuquerque, we decided to focus on lowriding. And so any Sunday, if you go out to downtown Albuquerque, you'll see lowriders traveling both the historic alignments of Route 66. And it's amazing. You can literally pull up a chair, sit down, and watch the community do their thing. And so lowriding has a rich history and long-standing tradition in New Mexico. And forgive me. So there's a very spirited debate about the exact origin location of lowriding. However, major centers of the culture grew out of Los Angeles and New Mexico, and Route 66 was really the connection between the two. And so in northern New Mexico, lowriding is a particularly strong tradition, and Española is named the lowrider capital of the world based on lowriders per capita. And so we interviewed Drifters Car Club, which is a club that does a lot of charity work with the community, and a club that has a very beautiful history in Albuquerque. And we even got to do a cruise with them that our whole office participated in, which you will see in the story map. It was so much fun. Alrighty, and so focusing on our central themes in this project that we really came across in our interviews and meeting these people and developing relationships with them. Oh, sorry. So and really these themes are all interconnected, and it's really hard to separate them out. But two of the themes is community and family. And so many of these interviews really reflected how our participants were raised, the values that they were raised on, the fact that out of anywhere in the world, they could be anywhere else, but they choose to return to their communities, they choose to work their families' businesses, and it's out of respect for their family legacy, but also out of respect for their community and still wanting to provide a service for their community. And so we have John Ramos from Drifters Car Club saying, "We care about our community and where we live, so this is why we try to give back to our community in different ways." The next two themes are discrimination and loss. So Route 66 is a culmination of tragedy, of beauty, and part of that tragedy is land loss. And so, especially in the town of Carnwell, you know, the Route 66 came through and it took a lot of people's lands. It took their fruit trees. It took their way of living. And then, of course, after Route 66 came Interstate 40, which through eminent domain, so many more properties were lost. And some families were compensated, but it's nothing compared to the history that they lost, to their ties to the land, and it changed the map of their community. And then, of course, there's stories of racism, of being Hispanic, of growing up, and of course, people's experiences with travelers on Route 66, but also just stories of racism within the very own communities that they live in. And so Barbara said, "A lot of land was taken away from a lot of members of the community. A lot of families moved on. How can you say we were compensated when our own history is in the land?" The next two themes are resiliency and legacy, again, tying into family and community. And so despite going through this project, I've been on this project for almost a year and a half now, and there's, just within my time on this project, there's been a lot of loss. There's been deaths in the family, people coming into ownership of family businesses they never expected to run themselves, and it's incredible, and so, forgive me, so inspiring to see the commitment and the love and the loyalty. And not only of recent family members that have passed, but of people who've already been gone for several years before this project. And it's been so amazing to hear stories about them and how they affected their communities. And so the final theme is education. And so, you know, despite the negatives, despite the positives of being a community on Route 66, so many people want travelers to know their communities. They want them to know that history. They want them to know the loss. They want them to know the culture. And so, all of them were so, and this ties into restoration as well. So many of our participants in these communities not only want people to learn, but they want people to learn so that they can restore parts of their communities that have suffered economic loss from I-40. They want people to learn so that they can build community development. And so I'll end it on this quote from Moises Gonzalez from Carnwell. "I think people should understand the transitions and the landscapes of Route 66. It goes to Indigenous relationships and conflicts and stories related to forced removals of Indigenous people. It relates to how people use their resiliency to create economic development and the tragedy of certain communities. So it's both a story of tragedy, relationships, and celebration." And that's really our biggest takeaway during this project. And we hope that it'll be y'all's takeaway when you see our story map. Thank you.
I'm back. Thank you so much, Karina. And you will be able to see her story map whenever it's live. It will be linked onto our story maps, so you won't miss out any of the beautiful information. I don't remember what that QR code goes to, but it's there. The Abuelas page. Yes, that's what we're here for. You can see our team's story maps live. They went live at 4 a.m. this morning. Yeah, to my fellows. So our journey started on May 20th, and there's a video, so I'm going to talk real quick. 2 media interviews in Amarillo. They heard what we were doing, and they're like, "What's up?" So it was really exciting. We visited 4 different NPS sites, including, of course, the Grand Canyon. This road trip took 11 days. Think of 6 women in a car for 11 days. It was very intense. 17 oral histories, but really that accumulated to about 40 hours of footage. And then it was 1,700 miles driven. And I just want to say thank you to the fellows who survived my driving. So I made a little video.
Established in 1926, Route 66 was one of the original highways in the U.S. highway system.
The Mother Road played a crucial role in facilitating westward migration, economic development, and tourism.
Today, as an icon of the American dream, the route has been immortalized through literature, music, and films. But
have the Latinx stories been preserved too?
On May 20th, 2024, the Abuela's Route 66 team set off on an 11-day road trip to document the bottom half of the Latinx Route 66.
The barrio is really an iconic place because that's where a lot of families got started, and the churches played an important role in that. The schools in the barrio were just for Mexican kids. There was discrimination based on race on where you could or couldn't go.
I built this house here because I couldn't buy any property across the tracks on the west side. That was designated for whites only.
33% of the population here is Hispanic. And so if 1 out of 3 are Hispanic, our city has realized we need to work with our Hispanic families, our business owners, etc. You need to develop a relationship, and here's how you do that. You come to the neighborhoods, you spend time with us, you get to know us, you share your resources with us.
You know, we probably have more foot traffic in the barrio than other parts of town.
If you've been to La Frontera restaurant, you're in the barrio.
La Frontera was a neighborhood grocery store when I was a kid.
This was a little candy. There's a mural kind of on the waiting room when you come into the front door of La Frontera.
My favorite mural is the one underneath the bridge on 27th by Fiesta Foods.
That's where you enter into the neighborhood. This really is sort of the heart of the barrio.
There's a pride there with that. You know, like, hey, we have something really cool here that tells a story. This is our story.
One thing about the barrio and the Mexican community, I think from the beginning of life to the end of life, your community is with you. You involve them in birthday parties, quinceañeras, weddings, graduations, and at the end, they're there with you.
Barelas South 4th Street Historic District became part of the National Register of Historic Places in 1997.
This flower shop has been in business for over 150 years. I have owned this shop for over 40 years. It is on the historical route.
Barelas was part of the original Route 66, started in 1926, but in 1937 in New Mexico it was rerouted. That was kind of part of the downfall of the neighborhood. That is another part of our history in this city that was thriving, you know what I mean?
Right here on 4th Street is part of Route 66. The lowriders, they'll have a cruise and they'll all park and line up down 4th Street and they just cruise back and forth, and people put their lawn chairs out and they just hang out. It's really, really cool.
So
When you were born and raised like in a neighborhood like this, you have your grandmas and your grandpas, and they're the ones that keep you together, and they keep your heritage, your culture alive. If you don't know who you really, really are, then you don't know your culture.
The Hispanic Cultural Center as a whole kind of helped me with my own identity, and it's important for people to know the past of this area, because there's a lot of spaces that are important to Latinos, and they need to be acknowledged.
You know, I love the people here, you know, and I just love Albuquerque.
A big one for Flagstaff that's considered a sacred space for the indigenous population here is the San Francisco Peaks. I would say that some of the things that our community really appreciates from us is that we seek to improve those communal ties, and we seek to bring haja, which is balance.
I love Flagstaff. This is my home, it's my community, and yet Flagstaff I think of sometimes as a beautiful, calm ocean that you look at, but there's this strong undertow that can really hurt communities of color. COVID affected our Hispanic community members, many of them in service or other kinds of more physical jobs.
The neighborhood, it's being taken over because it's across Route 66 is NAU.
In the south side, the university has bought up a lot of the houses that were traditionally part of our Hispanic communities, and so we've lost
a lot of neighbors, families, because they sell grandma and grandpa's house and they're out of here. I remember this man saying that whole area should just be razed and start over. And I'm like, how dare you? That's where I live. That's where I want to live. How dare you say that?
Route 66 was at least two main things that drew Hispanic communities here, and one was the logging, the lumber industry, the sawmills.
I got a grant from the city to engrave bricks with Mr. and Mrs., and we're putting them in the park. So, and then there's going to be a QR code. So if you want to know who Mrs. and Mr. Otero is, oh, that was the grandparents to the U.S. Marshal David Gonzalez. At least their names will still be there. They're not forgotten. So we don't forget. They worked really hard. They really worked hard.
Basically, Flagstaff is fantastic. It's a place to be, a place to live.
What's interesting is when I moved home, I said, San Bernardino needs that. And I said, you know what? I need to go to my home and invest in the shared identity that we have here. I saw how the draw of history makes people kind of come together and really steward their place well. So the museum really went from museums being kind of this voice of authority to a safe place and a place where our local tribal community can say, that's my museum. Our goal is to steward what we have well, but understand we're not the subject matter experts in everything. It's impossible. We rely on community members to kind of assist us in telling that story.
So I don't see Route 66 a happy place for people of color. Most of what you read about harm that came to people of color along Route 66. I mapped all of the African Americans and the Mexicans in the city, and you really see a very distinct line between Pico Boulevard, and it's literally like a half block south of Santa Monica Boulevard. One of the things that we struggle with in Santa Monica is that we have not respected our communities of Mexicans and Blacks. I mean, basically the system is designed to recognize the
homes of rich white people that were built by fancy white architects. So finding places that represent our Mexican community that meet these very stringent criteria is very difficult, and we have not been successful.
Watch it again? Okay, there we go. That will be available also on the story map in the future. And that was only snippets from a lot of really beautiful and rich information that we got. Our methodology was practically the same as Karina's. So I'm going to pass it off to Mel so she has time to talk about hers.
Hello? Oh, no? Hello?
Can we get the hand mic?
Okay, can you hear me? Awesome, awesome. Okay, let me. Can I get a little bit help over here? How do I get this to this? Oh, perfect. Okay. Oh, nice. Okay. Well, thank you, Asami, for putting together such an amazing video of all the memories that we captured along the route. And as well as all the fellows are going to be presenting today about the history and the memories and a lot of maps that were included. I know Asami earlier had asked whether anyone has used GIS, especially for historic preservation. And so a lot of the maps that I've included in here really captures a lot of the historical sites that have yet to be registered, but also that are over 50 years old. So my first story map, Amy. So I actually have two story maps. There's one that's for Texas and New Mexico. Can I get Texas to? It's on the other. This is California, this is New Mexico, and this is Arizona. There's no Texas here. Okay. Actually, I can start onto the New Mexico story map if that's. Oh, okay, I see it. Never mind, thank you so much. Okay, so for this presentation, I definitely covered two story maps, Texas, and I'm gonna be starting over Texas and then New Mexico. So when I found in Texas, I was really looking into neighborhoods, specifically Mexican neighborhoods that are bypassed by Route 66. And so I found one through the help of Teresa Kennedy. She's been living in Amarillo for over 30 years, and she wrote a book about the barrio in Amarillo, Texas, in collaboration with the Barrio Neighborhood Planning Committee. So what I found here was that in 1887, Amarillo was founded, and they ended up building a railroad. It was really rural at first. Actually, the population of Latinx was around like 300 in the Panhandle. But after the building of railroads, it really brought in a lot of Mexican workers into the city. But because of discrimination, segregation, a lot of them ended up building neighborhoods specifically right across from the railroad. And so with that, it was only like 3 years later that El Barrio was founded and established, where Mexican workers and then later their families would arrive and build a foundation there within the community. And so you can see right here, I had mentioned earlier that I was mapping El Barrio. And so again, Teresa Kennedy really put a lot of work into finding these historical sites, also creating these maps as well. So I ended up using the map that was provided to map out these historical sites. And if you can see right here, this yellow-orange boundary, that's actually where the Santa Fe Railway was constructed. And that boundary itself is El Barrio, which is around 900 acres with over 1,500 residents and many, like almost 200 commercial areas. And so if I slide right here, within the story map, you can actually explore, and they have a lot of pop-ups that will give you information in regards to the story map and the historical sites there. So that was a railroad property founded in the 1960s, and around here there's around 28 historical sites within the barrio, or just right across the barrio itself. So it's amazing to see the amount of historical sites that are just right across from their homes. And if you look to the right, that's actually one of my focus as well, is like looking at not only the memories, but also the murals that live, that are right within the city. And that's actually 2 dedicated workers at the Wesley Community Center within El Barrio that has been operating for almost 70 years now. And so that mural was actually created by Blank Spaces, one of the nonprofit organization that is within Kids Inc. and also El Barrio as well. And so they painted that to celebrate the anniversary of the Wesley Community Center in the neighborhood. So again, I had mentioned Blank Spaces. I was able to meet with them and interview, especially a lot of the, it was actually founded not so long ago, right before the pandemic, and to this day, they have over like 73 murals mapped out along Amarillo. So right here is actually all of the murals that are within the city. It's through like an orange symbology, and you can kind of actually pull it up as well. I'm so sorry. Oh, check me out. And you can kind of get like an image and some information in the artist as well that created the murals within the city. So that's mostly like around like 75, almost to 80 murals within Amarillo that I mapped out. And then right here you can see almost all of them, if not over 90% of them, are created by Blank Spaces, which again was Sean Kennedy, which he's pictured right here in the center, along with students from El Barrio, created and painted all of these murals along the city. And typically actually takes them like 1 to 2 weeks, and they move on to a next project. So they work really fast and really hard into ensuring that these murals are up and ready to go and kind of celebrate the history and also the culture on Route 66. So not only are there murals in regards to like even Will Rodgers in celebration of his legacy, but also Latinx culture. And if you look into the story map, I actually have a map also looking at murals that are within 1 mile of Route 66, and there's over like 50 murals along that path, and almost 6 of them relate to the Latinx culture and history that is within El Barrio. Let me see. Oh, skipped over here. So as you can see right here, these are all of the images of the great individuals I was able to interview. At the top right here is like David Rosas from the Barrio Neighborhood Planning Committee. He's the vice president. His grandfather actually worked on the railroads, and he lived in El Barrio. Most of them did end up staying, but a lot of them ended up moving out. A lot of them, like Jennifer as well, kind of like in the center bottom. She actually worked as a file clerk in the beginning and ended up through Wesley Community Center, and then ended up working for Amarillo National Bank as vice president and branch manager. So there's a lot of stories within the story maps that really captures exactly what El Barrio was meant to them, and also had an impact in their life as well. So a lot of them are very active in the community, ensuring that El Barrio improves not only in terms of just like, or like they get the history out there as well, and just some of the students, even like La Frontera, it's a business that has been in operation for it was in the video that Asami had pulled up, for more than like 50 years, but Mary Martinez has been operating the business for 40 years with her daughter and her granddaughter, and you can see her granddaughter right there next to her, and then there's their grandson. I know Gloria was mentioning one day, hopefully her grandson would work there as well too, and continue the business that has been in operations for many decades now. And that's really like the heart of the barrio. You can see really like the amount of community members that are actually just like, oh yeah, if you're in like La Frontera, it's really amazing food. And they have like a lot of bashes as well. Like they really celebrate the community through a lot of the efforts, not just, bringing like creating food or just like meeting together, but also creating events for everyone to come together outside of other community centers as well. So again, preserving historic businesses, I mentioned right now like La Frontera is one of the businesses that are within El Barrio. If you look into the story map, there's other business like Tacos Garcia, Fiesta Foods, and they also a grocery store. There's a lot of family legacy run business that still operate in El Barrio. And if you look at the map on your left, you can really see the population of Latinx individuals along the route. And it's kind of just, you can see like a lot of them are mostly in Texas, California, not surprisingly Puerto Rico's over here, but the largest. Yeah, we really try to capture all of these memories, and hopefully like in the future we'll be able to capture more in other states and other regions as well. Because again, these are just 2 neighborhoods that I was able to look at for Texas and New Mexico. And just to conclude, I really want to commend like Teresa Kennedy and the Barrio Neighborhood Planning Committee into like collaborating with us, and also like helping us in terms of reaching community members to partake in this project and tell their stories. And you can find all of this information and more, timeline of the history, also just a lot of other maps as well that I didn't get to put up here today that you can explore of the many contributions that the Barrio has put into it and created for Route 66 and also Amarillo. And they have such a great sense of pride. And there's also audio as well to like listen to their story and their perspective of Route 66 and also their time in El Barrio. So thank you for this. Actually, I'm going to go into my next story map. Thank you. So again, I really focused on Mexican neighborhoods, and I went ahead and looked at it through in Albuquerque, New Mexico. So of course there's Santa Fe, but I really wanted to focus in this city because there's a sound. If you remember from the video, Monica had mentioned Barelas was registered back in 1997. But when I was doing my research, a lot of the historical sites, although they're 50 years old, they're still not necessarily up and available through the many, I guess, like federal databases in order to map these sites. So I definitely went about and like gather information, talking to Monica. She's done so much amazing work in terms of preserving Barelas, but also mapping the historical sites that are within the community as well. So almost similar to El Barrio, Barelas really formed because of the Santa Fe Railway, and it really brought in again Mexican laborers. And so you can see right there in the image from New Mexico, that really is like a common theme that I found within communities that are like along Route 66 or built right across from Route 66. Again, the railroads started back in the 1880s, and then the interstate and then the highway for Route 66 was back in 1926. It got decommissioned in 1965. So, you know, a lot of the times Route 66 was beneficial for these communities, but at the same time it also hurt them as well. So that's kind of like some of the themes that came about from this research and the work that has been done for Albuquerque, New Mexico. So if you look into the story map, I mostly focus on historical sites like businesses and restaurants. And the Red Ball Cafe was actually along the route as well. It was actually owned by Nestor and Aurora Padilla in 1992. So their inspiration was to kind of create this burger. It's called like the Wimpy Burger. It was like 5 cents at the time, which is really nice, if only. So they created the business back in 1922, and unfortunately Nestor passed away, and Aurora actually ran the business with her sister for another, from 1961 to 1979. And then after that, it went through many different owners throughout the time. James and Teresa, no relation, ended up buying the business and continuing that legacy. And then Leticia was actually someone that we interviewed as well when we went there in Albuquerque, New Mexico. And she also owned the site. She was also in the video as well. She has done such amazing work. She's actually collected a lot of like newspapers, archives. She's always in there trying to get the history and understand exactly the impact of Red Ball Cafe to Barelas. So the thing was, like, the pandemic really had an impact, unfortunately, to the business and her ability to continue operating the Red Ball Cafe. So unfortunately, although some business do thrive, like La Frontera in El Barrio in Amarillo, Texas, there are some businesses along the route that just unfortunately wasn't able to continue, although the long history that they have an impact to the community. So currently, the Red Ball Cafe, the owner's actually unknown. I know they just recently sold it to someone else right now, and in the future, I'm not quite sure if exactly the Red Ball Cafe will continue to serve these burgers or just continue to hold these memories and history that has been in operation for many years. So that's definitely some of the cases that I found along the route, although some do thrive, some do. The pressures of the pandemic have definitely impacted a lot of these businesses along the route. So again, Monica Bencomo, she's the one I mentioned earlier that you can see in this picture on the right. That's actually B. Rupi drugstore that is within like almost walking distance in Barelas. Barelas is such a small community. You can honestly just walk and just get to the next restaurant business, and it's a really great place to get to know the rich history of the community as well. So Monica actually works from HomeWise, and their mission is actually to strengthen the neighborhoods in Barelas, but also to kind of buy up historical businesses or sites to kind of like revitalize them in Barelas in order for it to remain that rich cultural history that has operated in many years. So unfortunately, like in the story map as well, I go into the history of Bernard B. Rupi. He was a pharmacist. He ended up operating for many years and then passed it down to Tom Chavez, and then eventually Maclovia, which is you can see right there on the mural. And she really used a lot of the techniques that she used in terms of like in providing services was through herbs. And so that was really interesting to kind of like use that type of, and she had like, there was a lot of, it's actually inside the B. Rupi drugstore, there's like a little museum and exhibit that you can learn a lot more about the history of the drugstore. And so Monica has been really great in like preserving that history, and she really helped me get connected to a lot of the community members within Barelas. So it actually closed back in 2017 after the passing of Maclovia, and Monica's hopes is to continue to revitalize this business and hopefully to see more individuals also bringing their businesses into Barelas, because a lot of them have been closing down. There was a music store that has closed down, and so there's definitely like the efforts that she has put into is like definitely doesn't go unnoticed, because it definitely has helped me in terms of understanding its history, but hopefully that will help others along the way to understand the impact that these residents have along the route as well. And so let's see here. Okay, so actually I mentioned earlier that I was looking at the National Park Service data, which is amazing, by the way, and she said it was designated right in 1997. So that's actually the boundary of Barelas. It's like right across the Rio Grande River. And you can see right here on this map, these are the sites that are registered, and so there's some along the route. This red boundary here is Route 66, or this red highway. So, oops, let me get that out. Let's see, 1 second. There it goes. So you can really see right here, there's like around like 6 of them right here that's uploaded into the geodatabase system. So that's really amazing to understand the amount of historical sites that are within Barelas. But after the research that was conducted by Monica, I definitely, sorry, this is getting finicky sometimes. Let's see here. Okay. So you can see 6 sites there, and you can see all the other sites that are not within the geodatabase system that are not registered. So this really captures like the amount of work that Monica has really put into researching and also conducting or getting a lot of historical maps from to understand the historical sites in Barelas. So there's around 32, and that same thing as like the murals, you can actually click into it and get to know a little bit more information about the site, where it's located, its history and image as well. So hopefully that in the future, we're able to provide this information to other organizations that are mapping these historical sites in order to have better access to these and to further have conduct more information, because a lot of this, again, there's only so much information that was collected, and there needs to be like a deep dive on understanding the integrity of the structure in order to ensure that these sites do get registered in the future. So that's something you'll find in the story map as well. And then another shop as well is I's Flower Shop. It's amazing to know that it's been in operation over 100 years. You can actually see right here, this was its original location right over here, and then it kind of just turned into a revamped upholstery, and they moved over to a new location. It's ran by Rosemary. She's, again, been operating this since. She actually got this as a gift from her husband, because she's actually worked for many floral shops and ended up getting that during Easter Sunday and been in operations. And so she really operates this flower shop mostly by with other three part-time staff, and as well as Leticia as well. She was the former owner of Red Ball Cafe. So it really takes a community to ensure that these businesses continue to thrive and operate in such a very small community as well. So she's definitely worked with many multiple artists as well, or just like providing, she even provided florals to Monica Bencomo, which is really sweet. So you can really see how close they are together, and just how everyone just like basically, when you walk down, it's just hard to miss most of these shops. And they have a lot of amazing murals as well, something that I actually didn't get to map out. So maybe something y'all can consider in the future for sure. And then I want to conclude on the future of Barrelas. Again, there's many businesses that have been operating, some even closed itself, some are hoping to revitalize. But here you can see a picture of Bale Cisneros. He actually grew up in Barrelas, and right there he's actually pointing at a picture of him as a kid in Barrelas. And he had his tattoo shop actually operating outside of the district, but ended up moving back because of how much he really missed his community, and to build and revitalize and kind of expand the businesses that exist in Barrelas. Not only does he own a tattoo shop, but he owns a coffee shop, a barber shop, many other shops as well. He works with his brother too within Barrelas, and you can, like, once you drive into it, you can't really miss it, because there's like a sign as well, like in El Barrio, that has like this very colorful sign that says, like, you know, well, bienvenidos en Barrelas, and you'll see that there. And he's, you can see his story and understand his, the impact that Barrelas has in his life. Again, right, he moved back into to the town, and hopefully, I mean, his business has been around, for this specific business at the site, it's been in business for almost like 3 years. So it's gonna be exciting to see, and a lot of the residents have actually like welcomed him back, and like are very hopeful to see how this will transform the neighborhood in the future. So I want to thank you, like, to the National Trust, LHC, the Barrio Neighborhood Planning Committee, and everyone who was a part of this process, and in order to document these sites and these memories along the route. So I would definitely go ahead and check this, get more information as you log into the Abuelas Project to better understand the history and the murals and all the maps that you could look at and understand with all the pop-ups that are available. So thank you so much.
Hi everyone, I would like to point out 2 things. First, I'm so thankful I am moving because I'm cold in here, so entertain me. Number 2, thank you now for being halfway through this. This is my boss.
Hi, sorry. Just a quick announcement. So I know y'all are hungry, but y'all are gonna have lunch at 12:30. So don't want to rush the beautiful work that the fellows have done. So yeah.
I'm gonna call him my uncle, the Puerto Rican that told us that be radical and get us out here in time. That was a big ask. I'm not promising that. So my name is Karina Amalbert. I am, to give a visual for all of us who are online, I am actually the tallest of our group at a solid 5'4". I am wearing one of the 4 amazing Abuela shirts that our boss Asami has designed, with some cappy capris, bringing it back to 90s, and some cool red shoes. And thank you to those who have applauded me on. So I am very fortunate, grateful, and thankful to be here talking to you all about the state of Arizona, having a critical conversation with you about the Latinx voices and the Native voices here. There are 2 main themes that I will be discussing with you today. We will be talking about chisme, entre amigos, and we will be talking about decolonizing Latinidad. Huepa. So we'll keep it pushing. Okay, so as much as I like to enjoy and I like to talk, this will be a difficult conversation. As we entered Arizona, we entered very difficult conversations, so I do want to give a trigger warning. I will be talking about murdering MMIP, so missing and murdered indigenous peoples. I welcome you to stay here and engage in this conversation with me, but I also understand that this is a difficult conversation, a triggering conversation. If you are online and want to mute me, I understand. If you want to get up and exit the space, I understand. So to start us off, when we start uncovering the hidden truths of Route 66, we realize that there is a deep history of exploitation and intentional erasure of Latinx and Native populations along the route. as we go through these story maps that once again, we're live at 4 a.m. If you wanted to talk to us and you have not been able to find us, we have been in the corner working on these story maps. I want to remind everyone, these are first drafts. We are actively working with our community members to make sure that these are representations of their stories. I am not the expert, they are the expert. Whatever is on this story map is what they want. So if you see something and a few months from now it's not on there, they said that they don't want it there anymore, and that's not my business. Okay, so we want to amplify along these routes too that although there is a long history of exploitation and active erasure, there's stories of resistance and there's stories of cultivation of joy in racially charged spaces. As I said earlier, important for me to honor the people and the lands that aided us in our journey to understand the Latinx and indigenous populations along Route 66. I would have not been able to do this project without the 4 incredible individuals here. I am indebted to Nuestras Raíces in Flagstaff, Arizona, and also NACA, Native Americans for Community Action. I am also indebted to the land that allowed us to travel through Route 66. And as I said, again, we will be having a difficult conversation for the next few minutes. So to start us off, I want to thank Mel for teaching me about briefings, because now you can see our cool maps. Let's have a conversation about demographic changes around the United States, right? Here we have a map of ACS data from 2015 to 20-something. Here we see our purple line, Route 66, traveling from California all the way up to Illinois. We are understanding here where our population, our Latino population is in the United States. If you are a data analyst, anyone who has worked with the census data, or anyone who is honestly engaged in this room right now, you understand that that is a difficult survey. What is race? What is ethnicity? How are we charting that? What did that look like in the 1920s? How did that change in the 1940s? When was it beneficial for foreigners, for migrants, for natives, for Latinos? How are you identifying to be included for economic purposes? And also, when was it beneficial for white folks to change our category to improve their economic opportunities, right? So when we look at census data and we look at data in general, we're applying a very critical lens, knowing that this is not the full story, but this is a story that we are trying to unravel and we have access to as of right now. So the cool thing about GIS is it's interactive. So let's zoom in. So I had the lovely state of Arizona. We just had state. Look at that. We now have county population. So as Mel started us off here in Texas, and I realized earlier that there was I love this color gradient here. In Texas and in Amarillo, Amarillo, as I was told, you see a higher density of Latinx populations. As we traveled into Arizona, where we were, again, quite literally driving through a van, Asami was being, we lost a lot of that Latinx data. There clearly decreases, the gradient decreases, and we were confused. Because as we know, Latinos are a large portion of the United States, and we weren't understanding this data at all. Obviously, it goes a little bit higher up, we increase our density once we head into California, but we were curious what was going on in this state of Arizona. This map right now is not on the story map, it will be eventually at some point. As you go deeper into it though, this area over here is our boundary. I'm actually gonna keep going because now I have this route memorized. We go through census tracts, right? And we start seeing a conversation of where are these agglomerated populations heading. So we have some certain pockets. I invite you to challenge data like this, especially when we look at historic census data that tells us that Mexican Americans were the highest population at one point. You check the data 10 years later, the story ends.
Hello? Which one worked? This one worked?
I'm getting the memo. I'll keep us pushing. I'm sorry. Okay. So I'm going to be talking a little bit more about the challenges that are being faced with the Latinx population. So Flagstaff, Arizona, what really brought Latinos to this area was the Arizona lumber industry. So if you have ever heard about factories or histories of factories, you probably have heard the stories of individuals, a lot of men, traveling to these areas for economic opportunities and not coming home because they lost their lives in these jobs, or coming home missing limbs because they were injured, and then coming home with, during the era of maybe $4 a month. One of the interviews that we conducted, Jesse Dominguez told us of the story of his father coming home injured and receiving the checks of $4 a month, and that was his compensation after years of dedicating his life to this factory, and they never cashed the checks. That was something that was offensive to them, and they were gonna make it without it. Patty Garcia, she told to our story of her father working in the factories and how he would line the kids up and would kiss each and every single one of them every single time he went to his job, because he did not know if he was going to make it back that night. And she tells the story of how when she became an adult, she recognized that that's what her father was doing. So one of the things that we realized last night at around 2:30 a.m. was that there are 2 sites in Flagstaff, Arizona that are preserved. They have the South Beaver Elementary School, which is a intentionally designed segregated school for Hispanic children, for Latinx children in Flagstaff, Arizona. And also Our Lady of Guadalupe, which was the Latinx church for the Flagstaff Latinx population. But the sawmill factory was not in that data set. So why is that, NPS? You tell me. So there is a conversation of preservation in Flagstaff. The next slide, I'll tell you about our influx of time. There is, as you heard in the video, a conversation of affordability. A lot of these folks that have lived here for generations and worked in these labor markets for generations cannot afford their rent anymore, and they are still renting. Their home ownership, they are struggling, competing with universities who are buying them out. They're competing with gentrification. A neighborhood that was single-family houses, you knew your neighbors, you knew the achievement of your neighbors, there was eyes on the streets, is now a 3-story fraternity house that is blasting music at Friday nights. This is a problem that is actively affecting Flagstaff, Arizona, and the people of La Plaza Vieja are trying to fight against. Look, a map. So before we go into the map, I want to talk about these 3 businesses here. Something that came out with Flagstaff that was interesting is a conversation of what is a Latinx site. So when we think of it, we think of a story, we think of a building, but what if a building that we call La Tiendita was not Latin owned, but we all hung out there? What is it if it was for instance, right now, we have taken over this library and had 3 days worth of conversations, but once we leave, this library goes back to its original state. Is that not history? Did we not create stories here? How do we preserve places that are in flux with time? Or it ain't there. They're muting me? Oh, okay, it was me. No, sorry. I take it back. How are we preserving them? What are we categorizing them as, right? When we talk about public parks, are they truly public? Are we actually engaging with them? So Jesse, as he told us, they have a project to create bricks and have these bricks there. How are we ensuring that those bricks aren't gonna stay there for the long term when Jesse's not there anymore? So, and there's also a large conversation of informal businesses. Irene, you saw in our video, she is a famous hairdresser, an iconic one, where she struggled a lot with racism, with intentional othering. And she honestly was just there to make every single woman feel beautiful. So now as a retired age, she has a hair salon in her house, and she also makes pottery. So how do we recognize these informal businesses that are within our houses? In the middle image, we have O'Leary's. This is what everyone kept referring to as La Tiendita. So I was expecting a little sign that said La Tiendita. When we go to take a picture and it says O'Leary, I was like, who's O'Leary? What are we? Have we spent an entire day and a half with Patty Garcia, right? Time was not real during Flagstaff. And when she pulled up, she was like, oh, no, this is not Latin owned. But Latinos were definitely there every single day. And we would go in and we would sweep the floor and he would be able to give us a little Coke. We had a little sweet treat, whatever it was that we earned that day for doing our little chores with him, right? And this store is still in operation and it's within our south side of Flagstaff. So right in the heart of one of the Latinx neighborhoods. What does that mean, right? That's a difficult conversation. We don't own it, do we? You know? And then we also have the Catholic school. So in the bottom picture, that is not in operation today, but a lot of individuals did attend that Catholic school. It's in La Plaza Vieja. Any guesses to what it is? 1, 2, 3. It's with the skiing industry right now. So this building is in the heart of La Plaza Vieja, and yet they do not have access to it anymore. It is now a skiing company, and they say it's warehouses now, and it's right behind the factory. So very interesting and complicated conversations of sites that were important to you that you see on a daily basis and yet you don't have access to anymore. What does that mean? So if you are in a time crunch or you're interested in GIS and you're like, oh my gosh, like I just don't want to create a feature layer, it's just so difficult. Don't worry. This is an express map. These are fun because if you've ever interacted with Google Earth, these are some fun ones that you can kind of create without having technical skills or expertise. So here, let's look at what Flagstaff kind of looks like, and I'll step over here. So Route 66, Route 66 and I-4 are very interesting in Flagstaff. They intersect and then they diverge and then they intersect again. This is where we start getting into that complicated history of when I-4 I'm from Florida, you can tell. I-40 kind of like went around, but then were some parts of Route 66. There was some days where we were on dirt roads, but those were fun. Anyways, here we see that Route 66 kind of creates this divide. And we heard that in a lot of our oral histories. Almost every single oral history talked about that Route 66 was that divide of who lived on what side of the tracks, right? So La Plaza Vieja is a historic Latinx site neighborhood in Flagstaff. It's located up here in this area where it's kind of like that polygon is where the sawmill factory was. There are the two sites that we have. So we have Our Lady of Guadalupe up there and we have South Beaver down here. When you look at a map, you quite literally see that Latinx sites were across Route 66. People had to physically, emotionally, and mentally cross that road to go into spaces where they felt safe and they were creating community. That in itself is an experience of Route 66, right? So at the same time, what we have where Our Lady of Guadalupe is, that whole area is called South Side. That's where you start entering conversations of African American and Black communities and their conversations of what that looks like with Mexican American and Latino communities and the tensions and the communal gatherings that happen between the both. It's important to mention now that we're talking about South Beaver. The South Beaver was intentionally designed to be a segregated school for Latinx kids. At the same time, there was also other schools happening. There was a segregated school for African Americans, and there was a boarding school in 1940s for the indigenous communities. So while people were driving through Route 66 and driving over, we still were experiencing boarding schools. Let's keep going. I still have y'all? Yes, Karina. Let's talk about Chisme. So this was a good question because when I got approached to the project, and I'm gonna wrap it up because there's a lot to talk about. I was like, I wanna talk about Chisme, come on. Chisme is a feminist Latinx origin practice that we created because we wanted to do community gathering and we wanted to chismear. It's a safety practice, it's a community building practice. We are warning each other, we are protecting each other. And what did it become? Something that downgraded our experiences. So that was a question that we did in our oral histories. I very much asked, I was like, do you have any chisme to give me? And people were leaning in and they were like, déjame decirte. Or like, oye esto. And every single story that was given was a story of either the nuances within Latinidad. So what does Spanish sound like in New Mexico when you marry your wife and now you have her in Flagstaff and the mom and your wife are trying to talk to each other? Or community projects that they're trying to do, right? So here we have a quote that will close off the Chisme Entre Amigos of, it's because if you don't preserve what you had and you don't know what you have, and so some of the things that we have now is because of what the old people did for us. I mean, that's what they did for us. They showed us how to survive. They showed us how to make ends meet. They showed us how to be neighbors and protect each other. And take care of each other. So this is Jesse Dominguez. So I'll close off our conversation here. If you want to learn more about Chisme Entre Amigos, talk to me. So, hold on, I'm not done. So another thing that was really important to me and the team about Route 66 in Arizona, and I will speed through this, is native voice. We wanted to be very intentional about the fact that Latinidad is very, very different, right? These are sacred lands that we need to have a conversation with. We need to have a conversation about individuals who are not from this native land, but from other native lands across Latin America. When they come to these sacred lands, what does that mean? What does it mean when you build a quite literal road through sacred lands? What does it mean for automobiles to be driving through these sacred lands, right? And what does it mean for Route 66 to have followed the path of the Trail of Tears from Oklahoma? These are paths that carry emotions, and they are lands, and when you're traveling through it, you feel it. What does that mean? So this map here, we mapped our indigenous lands across Route 66. So you see them a little bit more towards your west coast, especially in Arizona. This was very important for us. I want to highlight an organization that I am indebted to, Native Americans for Community Action. This is a grassroots organization that focuses on holistic well-being, holistic including economic benefits programs where they are helping artists from Flagstaff be able to sell their jewelry, their wares, all of that, and be able to help create generational wealth to get their children through college. One of the things that we talked about is how running is very much a native and indigenous way to connect with land. So they do 5Ks often, and they do running programs really cool. They offer mental health services to individuals incarcerated. They offer almost any single thing that you can think of, they are offering it, right? So I am indebted to them. They welcomed me, and we had great conversations with them. Also understanding that to do research and to do oral histories with indigenous nations, it is a very long process where you have to ask if you are welcomed and be okay with no. So this is a long process where we are actively still working with them and ensuring that we are getting their story right. So again, I wanted to bring up MMIP because this was something that was brought to our attention. So we were able to meet the mother of Lance Scott Armstrong, who went missing actually a few days before we arrived on Sunday, March 3rd, 2024, when he was visiting his grandparents. This is an active epidemic that is facing the population and the community of indigenous people in Arizona. Honestly, all of them. Everyone, not just in Arizona. This is not just a tragedy, this is intentional harm, where you see across Route 66, people are crossing this road to be able to go visit their families, and they're going missing. You will see it in the story map that we are calling for these people to be brought back to their home in a safe and alive manner. We are honoring those who we have lost, who have actively been murdered. And we want to make sure that we're being intentional about when we have historic images, we are not saying individuals unknown, we are saying individuals once known. We are not saying sites unknown, we are saying sites once known, because they were known. They were very much alive, and we have to honor their relationship to the land, right? Another thing that is facing the indigenous and native voices across the route is housing affordability. They are getting priced out, they are getting bought out. This is not okay, this is their land. Healthcare is another big thing that NACA brought to our attention. As you can imagine, and as we've learned today, we are definitely taking over indigenous practices of well-being, and then going back and being like, oh, I can help. No, that is their knowledge. We have to make sure that we are working with them. And what that means for what we would think just a road of American history, affecting the healthcare of Native voices along the communities. I know I went well over my time, and I'm not going to make eye contact with Asami. I thank you all, and I hope you ask me questions. Don't.
She needs to be avoiding eye contact with me. Wait, can y'all hear me? Okay, because I talk quieter than Mel, so I can't be loud. All right, so how many of you have heard of California? Yeah? Okay, so to quote one of the greats, we are now going back to Cali. So I focus on sites of Latinx grief, joy, and resistance, and I'm gonna go briefly over because I'm trying to wrap it up. Y'all are hungry? About how they're intertwined. So here is California overview. Most of y'all, you're here, you know where California is. So this map on the left, when it works, is gonna show the interstate and highway system of California. And so as most of us know, Route 66, because they've told you, once I get down there, it goes through California. And when it started going through California, it was going through communities that were already set up and already had their traditions, cultural, political economies that were there, and it went straight through them. And it didn't care that people were splitting families. They built it, and they said, this is where we belong. And then years later, they told the community, hey, you built your businesses here, you built families here, but we're gonna rip it away because we actually wanna reroute it to a more tourism-oriented route. And it moved from Pasadena to Santa Monica, which is the end that we know now, the famous Santa Monica Pier Trail. And so there were already Latino businesses that had been built along the route that relied on that touristic economy that were now told, you either lose your business or you figure out how to work with the community to keep your business in flux. So there's a lot of changes that we saw of communities either having to orient or unfortunately losing their businesses because of people from making these decisions that were not community oriented. They weren't going into communities and saying, hey, what do you all need? How does Route 66 impact you? They were deciding from this really high lens that this is what would be best for the wide economy and not really taking into the experiences of people of color in California. And so once I zone out of this, and then on the right is the map of the spaces we visited. So I sought to visit spaces of joy, grief, so some of the spaces we looked at, and you can click on them, and this is in the story map that I know y'all scanned the QR code for. So we visited spaces such as cemeteries, churches, cultural centers, and museums that sought to solidify and make more known what Latino heritage sites look like along the road. So we'll go through, in California, we had a little bit of a unique situation where we went to 3 different cities within California, and we didn't focus more so on one site because there was just so much that was being done in each city. So the first city that we visited was Barstow, and then we ended up going to Victorville after a conversation with some of the Latinx community members in Barstow. So something interesting about Barstow was that the population of Latinx and Hispanic identified folks has gone up, but the ownership of homes has gone down. And when we talked to folks, one of the things they noted was that, well, now we have more people who are transient and coming through the route, but they're either buying up houses and the prices are going up, and now we have to commute into work. So they're commuting 30 minutes to an hour into work from Victorville to Barstow, and they don't have access to housing, which is something that we all saw along the route, and I'll go over a little bit later about just how important that was, the lack of housing, and how the lack of housing leads to a lack of gathering spaces. When we were in Barstow, we saw not one tiendita, not one quinceañera store. We were like, where do you all go? Where do you go when you wanna look at quince dresses? And they're like, oh, we drive to San Bernardino, we drive an hour. And so because there's no housing and there's no way for them to build community there, you have to commute into either jobs or try to make do with what you have there, which is losing that really important integral part of cultural community. So moving along to San Bernardino. Okay, San Bernardino was really cool. So, San Bernardino was where we visited multiple cemeteries that were actually operated by the San Bernardino County Museum. So something really interesting about San Bernardino County Museum is that they have exhibits that are mostly bilingual and some of them are trilingual. And they work with the communities that are nearby to identify what the indigenous languages are and to have exhibits there that are also in that third language so that the community members can come and say, hey, this is my museum too. I worked on the exhibit, and something even cooler is that when all of the laws were passed that meant that they had to give back items to communities, they had worked with the communities so deeply that all the items they had were approved. So they actually didn't have to donate any items back because they had approval since they had worked with the community already, and they took that initiative very early on. So this site of the museum was one that we saw was really powerful, not only for the community that existed now, but as you can see in this image, the cemeteries that were there and the histories that were being preserved through the museum. So something that they did was they used technologies to look at the graves that were pre-existing to see who was there, and they helped families locate their relatives. And then if they brought in the death certificate or images of their family members, they would re-identify the grave. So now, like, they were not only helping the active community, but bringing in the histories of the deceased as well, and really building that bridge of community culture that was so important and that was so lost. And then to end in LA, any folks from LA? Yes, love that, love that. Okay, so in LA so I'm from LA, and this I think was like one of the hardest parts of the project for me, because I think we all know like how divisive that the highway system has been and how bad the freeways have been. Most people of color, we live along like freeways. I live near a freeway right now, and you know like the health concerns that come with that. And so like, I'm not gonna cry, but to see like that the highway went through and like not only devastated communities health-wise, but like economic-wise too, was really hard, I think, to live through, like to not only see that we lived through that now, but like historically, it was really intentional. Yeah, I'm not gonna cry, I'm gonna move on, but thank you. Even in the Santa Monica Conservancy, this is Nina Fresco, and Nina worked on this map, and she was the one who talked about mapping that line of Route 66 at Pico Boulevard. And so she was like the one who told us that like, even in Santa Monica Conservancy, who has people designated to try to help the community, they're still working against laws that are really hard to designate spaces that she knows and that they have documented history of why it was so important to the community. They were interviewing activists, but because people didn't value the community, it was so hard to get them designated as sites. But this is a really cool project that they're gonna continue to work on, and they're going into homes and doing really similar things to what we were doing and getting oral histories from folks. So I'm really happy with what they're doing going forward, and this is definitely kind of tying in the joy, grief, and resistance that for the Latino community, remembrance is a key form of resistance, and as long as we don't forget our histories, we continue to resist systems that tell us that our histories are not worth it. And so, just to wrap up, shared experiences across the route. My colegas talked about it as well as the housing crisis that people are facing. Everywhere we went, we were talking about getting priced out, getting put into neighborhoods that were unsafe very intentionally. So you already know this, you're familiar with it. Thank you for your time, and I'm gonna hand it over to Bea.
Hello? Hi, thank you for making it until this moment. I'm really proud of the team I've been working with. My name is Beatriz Dominguez Aleman. If you haven't met me, I probably took a photo of you. So I am from Chile and Puerto Rico, and I am morena with dark hair. So, and I'm wearing a beige dress and sneakers. So just for accessibility. There we go. So I was a photographer of this project, and I remember speaking with Seila and with Asami during the interview when they were telling me about the Route 66 project, the Abuelas project. And when they told me I could go to the Route 66, I was so excited since it was my dream. Actually, when I came to the United States 2 years ago, I imagined buying a car, which I didn't do, and driving Route 66, which I didn't do either. And that was all fueled by my father's love for the United States. He came here as a political exile in the 70s. He's from Chile. And he loved watching Chevy Chase movies. He loved watching National Lampoon Holiday. So we would watch that all the time, and that stuck in my brain. But I really had another idea of Route 66. And I thought it was a very American style place, and I was pleasantly surprised that I was wrong. So I'm going to show a little bit of pictures. I know you all are very hungry, but who wants to see some photos of this project? Well, so we're gonna start with Amarillo, Texas. This year was the first time I arrived to Texas. I identify as Latinoamericana. I am Chilena, and I started really during this trip, I started really questioning my identity, who I was, because I discovered there's so many different ways of being Latin American. It's not only a language thing, it's not only a geographic thing. And particularly in Amarillo, Texas, that's where I really got the wake-up call. And I think Mel showed La Frontera, the restaurant. And in the restaurant, I remember I entered, I was like, oh, La Frontera, oh, Mexican food. And I was like, hola, ¿cómo están? Oh, and I started speaking Spanish, and someone looked at me, and she came close, one of the interviewees, and she said, I'm sorry, I don't speak Spanish. I am 5th generation born here in the United States. So my mind went, oh, I felt really bad. I felt like I had done something wrong. I just did not understand that not everyone who is Latino speaks Spanish, and not everyone who's Latino speaks indigenous languages. There's just so many ways of being it. So I'm going to it's going to be a visual narration. Here are some photos from Amarillo. You also know the Cadillac Ranch, which I had some pictures of Mel while she was spray painting as well. She joined in the fun. And here you have the sign for the historic 6th Street and the RV park of La Loma. So on our way, it was dark. Asami drove a lot. And she's a great driver. I'm not saying it just because she's my boss, I swear. It was nice, and I said, hey, I was looking at the map, trying to see the different places. There were like 3 places in 200 kilometers or miles. And one of the stops we had was Klein's Corners. And I thought that was the most, that was just like the idea I had of the Griswolds in National Lampoon Holiday. I was like, that looks just like it. But that's gonna change a lot while we were on this trip. So once we arrived in New Mexico, yes, a dog. Everyone loves a dog. And we passed through a casino, and that casino, I couldn't show all the pictures, but it had mariachi. There was a sign that talks about mariachi. They were talking about piñata. They were talking about fiesta. I was like, wow, and they have the sign of Route 66. And I'm like, oh, wait, there's a lot more Latinos here. That's really interesting. And after I learned from my mistake in Amarillo to assume everyone spoke in Spanish, I just changed to English. But sometimes I was just confused. I didn't know what language to use. It was a little bit difficult. But in New Mexico, I really learned that Latinx cultures, people really assumed their new identity. They weren't Mexican, they were New Mexican. They were New Mexican tattoos. Like in Bales, he would say, I do New Mexican tattoos. There's New Mexican food, which is delicious, by the way. And that photo is from Ives Flower Shop. So during the interview, believe it or not, we had those 2 dogs right next to us, 2 cameras. Very stressful. Wait, there. So on our way to Flagstaff, we stopped at Cheese Trading Post, and I think Karina mentioned this, so again, a little disclaimer. And I think this is when you start seeing not only a joyous route, you also see very tough situations. We entered a store, and I see Karina very seriously speaking with the store teller. And it is a woman who is from who's Native American Navajo, and her son had disappeared, and they showed him Lance Armstrong. And those kind of situations of people getting close to us to talk to us was really frequent. It was like we were irradiating certain kind of energy. In New Mexico, someone came up to Mel and I and gave us a silver dollar coin. He just came into his car. He's like, wait, I have a present for you. He had no idea what we were doing. And that was, and then in Needles, California, there were some people who were asking for their picture to be taken. So I felt like we as a team, being the brown-haired Latina team, it really it made people feel very comfortable, and people they treated us as part of their comunidad. Even though I came from Chile, so that's very far, I felt very welcomed in every single space we came. And a little bit of Arizona was one of the moments where I really saw the Latino presence in Seligman. You have Juan's Garden, you have Angel Delgadillo, you have a lot of Latino names, places, stories. And in Flagstaff, you see Hotel Montevista. So the names, the Spanish words are very present, and also their people. Now in California, this was my first time being in the West Coast, so that was a very interesting place to, interesting moment for me. I really realized that the Route 66 I had imagined myself before starting this trip was not what Griswold's traveled, at least not what they had portrayed. I've always tried to show it as a very American, United States American culture, and I think there's so much more diverse. You have Native American nations, you have Latino stories, you have so much more, and that's what the beauty about this project is, going to highlight these other stories that are yet to be told. And here you have a picture of our two fellows, just in Calico, and it's a great picture. They didn't see me. I was kind of a little paparazzi sometimes. And there is Needles. It was 110 Fahrenheit that day. My camera was not happy. So in the end, I'm glad to say that my perspective has changed of Route 66 and of Latinx identities. So thank you.
So we decided to cancel lunch so we can continue for another 5 hours. I am kidding. Yes, everyone can blame Karina, but not the one that's in shame, not the other Karina. The one question that I figured people would have is, what's up, what's next? Hi, National Trust. We would love to continue exploring the rest of the route, and we would also love to, continue getting community voices. So if you have a story on Route 66, feel free to submit to the Abuelas Project. And if you have any questions, feel free to come find us so that folks can eat, because we don't want hangry people. Thank you so much.